Very good afternoon to you watching KTN Newsdesk. My name is Najma Ismail. Now, a political storm over supremacy is gaining ground in the coast region, with Kilifi North Member of Parliament Gideon Mungaro facing a political siege. A group of coast members of Parliament are threatening to remove Gideon Mungaro as the chairman of the coast parliamentary group. A section of elected leaders from Mombasa have accused him of undermining the unity of coastal people for allegedly failing to support the Jumuiya ya Pwani Counties Forum. Another section has come out to support him.
A section of coast leaders claim that Gideon Mungaro is attempting to divide the coastal people on tribal basis for his own political interests. The members of parliament say Mungaro is opposed to the Jumuiya ya County initiative.
Tunamchagua mmoja anakuwa msemaji, lakini tangu mtuchague, sikizeni kwa makini, hakuna aliyechaguliwa kama mwenyekiti wa kamati ya wabunge wa Pwani. Hakuna. Yuauza mkoa wa Pwani. Na kikubwa kiongozi wa hiyo msikizi akisimama, mimi ni Mmejikenda, mimi ni kabila hii. Hakuna mambo ya ukabila kwenye uongozi. Hakuna.
Tukisema tunafanya kazi kwa kitu kimoja, jumuiya za kaunti za Pwani zikiwa ni kitu kimoja, wewe kaa upige fujo kwenu, lakini ujue fujo lako litakuwa ni wewe peke yako.
Wewe ni Mkristo, mimi ni Muislamu, wewe ni Muhindu, lakini sisi wote ni wa Pwani, ni watu wa Mombasa County, tunasimamia mambo ya maendeleo.
On his part, the Kilifi Member of Parliament and the chairman of the Coast Parliamentary Group came out to defend his position.
Sioni mambo mageni kwamba Mombasa tena ndio na propose Mungaro atolewe kama mwenyekiti wa CPG ama Coast Parliamentary Group. Nataka kuambia kwamba nitolewa chief whip na bado niko naishi, na nikitolewa CPG bado nitaishi, lakini nitaendesha bado maadili yangu kwa sababu ni mjumbe na naweza kuongea na uhuru wa kutembea mahali kokote kule nataka Pwani.
Another section of members of parliament from Kwale supported Mungaro.
Which are the grave problems that we have in Kwale? We have bigger problems and our resources are limited. How do we share resources with Mombasa? Mombasa County is saturated already.
Wakati huo tulipo declare huo muungano wetu, magavana walikuwako lakini walikaa kando. Lakini leo they are daring us. Ati tuungane. Mbona hawataki kuungana na sisi? Kwa nini wanataka tuungane na muungano wao?
The leaders were speaking in Lunga Lunga after donating a school bus to Franz Joseph Secondary School. Mohammed Mahmoud, KTN.
More than 15 MPs from the newly launched Jubilee Alliance Party of Kenya have supported calls for Kenya to withdraw from the Rome Statute. Tetu MP Ndungu Githenji said he will soon table a motion in the National Assembly for Kenya's withdrawal from the ICC. He said the motion will seek to remove the country from the International Crimes Act, which Kenya was a signatory, adding that the court was being used to perpetrate neo-colonialism at the expense of justice. Moving on to Narok now, the government has banned a demonstration against Narok Governor Samuel Tunai slated for today in the county. Interior Cabinet Secretary Joseph Nkaiseri, in a statement read on his behalf by the Narok County Commissioner, Nkaiseri called for the calm and patience as the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission probes claims of corruption against Tunai. Organizers of the anti-Tunai demo led by Narok Senator Stephen Ole Ntutu have however vowed to go on with their planned demonstrations and march to the county headquarters to present a petition to the governors.
10,000 people to storm.
With just hours to the much-hyped demonstration against Narok Governor Samuel Tunai, the government says the demo will not be allowed to take place.
In the light of the heightened tension in Narok County, rallies and demonstrations in the county have been suspended with immediate effect.
The anti-Tunai faction led by Narok Senator Stephen Ole Ntutu says it has rallied thousands of residents to present a petition to Governor Tunai, and not even the suspension of demos and rallies by the government will get them to back down.
Mkutano huu ulikuwa umeitishwa na haita kwa cancel. Itaendelea kesho.
Hatutaahirisha mkutano haiahirishwi.
Hatuendi na bunduki, hatuendi na mkuki, hatuendi na silaha yoyote. Silaha ni hii petition.
Organizers say they have followed due process, but the government is daring them to disobey the suspension order.
It is our constitutional right. Tuende pale, ni governor ambayo tumemchagua, lakini kuna mambo ambayo haiendi sambamba.
But we are very prepared. I told you we have mobilized officers from the whole county, and we are even getting extra from outside the county.
The organizers are accusing the governor of corruption in, among other areas, collection of gate fees at the Maasai Mara Game Reserve.
Tangu tupate hii county government, bado pesa za huko Mara Triangle haijafika kwa county fund account.
Leaders allied to Samuel Tunai are vying to stand by the governor and are asking for dialogue, an option the Stephen Ole Ntutu faction is not ruling out.
And we need to give humble time to the government, county government, to implement its strategies instead of kupiga nduru. Let's give tonight time.
Sisi kwa upande yetu tunataka dialogue, tukipewa njia ya hiyo dialogue.
Leadership wrangles between the Narok governor and senator have persisted for a while, and Monday's events could open another chapter in the rivalry between the two leaders and factions allied to them. Rita Tinina, KTN.
Now, the phrase, "you can dress a goat in a suit, but it is still a goat," is becoming more and more popular by the day. But you know what else is becoming popular? The art of lying with a straight face. For more on this, here's Wilson Buru with this week's Mock the Week.
It's another beautiful day and another episode of Mock the Week. My name is Wilson Buru, and Jerry Mushura will be joining me a bit later on. Wait a minute. No, she won't. The last time I talked to Jerry, she was somewhere in the bush doing this. So, you know.
Mr. Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda. Hey! Professor Al-Qaeda. See you, baby! Al-Qaeda.
All right, let's get started. So, there's this video that has been doing the rounds over the internet of an incident that apparently took place in Gilgil. And I'm not going to say anything about it. I just want you to watch a few seconds of it, and then you tell me what you think.
Who is the owner of that company? Kwani ni Uganda ameza contract na Uganda? For whose interest? We are the ones who legislate. We make laws for this country. And this is who is the owner of this company?
But Mheshimiwa, you know, we enforce the laws, Mheshimiwa. That's why the government has deployed us here.
Okay, Skiza, we will reverse the law. Now, but we have to sack the people. We have to sack the people and we have to reverse the law. Why the 20? Yeah, let's go. He's so mad. Imagine, let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
State House Controller.
Yes, Mheshimiwa.
That is the president communicating.
Yes, sir.
Anapiga, hakuna mwenye anachukua simu. Mimi nikapiga simu, hakuna. I'm a member of parliament.
Yes, sir.
Chairman wa security Kenya mzima kamama.
Yes, sir.
Anapiga simu, no one picks.
Yes, sir.
Huyu anapiga, no one.
Yes.
We are about 10 members of parliament.
Yeah,
we
are
the ones making laws.
That is not
when we have to break it, we break it when we want.
That is
you are waiting to hear from who? From God.
And you know what?
Jesus Christ to call you.
This is
Kenya. This is the honorable Kenya.
Remember that saying of dressing up a goat in a suit? Yeah. I might not know who makes laws in this country, but here's what I'm sure of. If somebody says we make laws in this country so we break them when we want, it's probably a very good idea to question their sanity. And why does this remind me of the phrase spoilt brat?
When the president calls, my friend, you have to respect.
No,
whether you are or whatever.
You see,
you have to state on control anapiga simu alafu unasema ati release gari.
And speaking of sanity, or lack of it, when those who wrote the Bible inserted that verse that says, spare the rod and spoil the child, they probably had no idea that they had, at one time or the other, be a very bright, quite hard-working group of workers whose motto would be Utimuzi kwa wote, na tear gas. It was a peaceful Monday morning, and children from the Langata Road Primary School woke up to find a wall separating their school from the playground. So they decided to do what any child who has been taught well about obstacles would have done. Okay, let's pause this thing right there and reflect for a moment, shall we? 6-year-old children bring down a wall at a playground. Clearly, that is not right or safe. Ordinarily, you would expect teachers to be called in to discipline the children, right? But as one really angry person once said,
this is Kenya.
Yes, Kenya is steadily progressing towards achieving Vision 2030 by giving the police even more powers. The power to tear gas 6-year-olds. But as it is widely expected, if you tear gas children, you will be forced to feast on microphones. And after having a mouthful, you follow the rules of any police wrongdoing. Deny, deny, deny.
Tear gas were thrown to other demonstrators, not us. Tear gas were thrown to other demonstrators, not us.
We want to state that no children were tear gassed. In fact, what you have seen, and I have not, are just rabbits and bees. And as you know, the only way to ensure that bees don't sting is if you smoke them out.
They were pelleting stones to officers.
And the moral of the story is, parents, start stocking tear gas in your houses. That way, when the police show up at their school, it will not be such a traumatizing experience. Cue in the Interior Cabinet Secretary Joseph Nkaiseri, who was not exactly pleased with the quality of the tear gas fed to the children.
Mulikula tear gas kidogo, si kweli? Yes. Mulikula tear gas? Yes. Na hiyo tear gas haikuwa mzuri?
Oh yes. It would have helped if the said tear gas was in fact strawberry or vanilla flavored, like the one thrown to this guy. One can clearly see that he was in fact enjoying the vanilla smell and taste. But after all the tear gassing and barb throwing that followed,
it is deplorable in the manner in which the police handled those young children.
It was time to launch a new game segment. Guess the Grabber. That's right, it's a new game segment on Mock the Week, and what we do on this game segment is we give only one person the chance to guess the grabber. Now let's see who is it going to be. That's right, Bungoma Senator Moses Wetangula, go. What is your guess?
A top Jubilee leader.
Oh no, Senator Wetangula, unfortunately you are wrong. But here's some good news. Let's spin our wheel of grabbing and see who the winner is.
Mandeep Singh Amrit, Majid Singh Amrit, Kamau Prakash Amrit.
And in this country, we only believe what we want. And this singing from Mama Ngilu was not exactly convincing. Wilson Buru. Da 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 da! I'm done. For KTN's Mock the Week.
I have no words for Wilson Buru. Now, moving on, the Disabled Business Owners Association is crying foul on the presidential directive to have 30% of government procurement reserved for marginalized groups 1.5 years later, and the disabled group says that people with disabilities are yet to be given serious considerations in being given tenders. The group says that among the marginalized groups categorized into women, youth, and persons with disabilities, the persons with disabilities are least recognized and face more challenges than women and youth. They are now pleading to have their own reservation in the tendering process to promote what they say would be a fairer competition. They also want an enterprise fund to be set up to fund LPOs given to persons with disability.
To date, hundreds of enterprises owned by persons with disabilities are up and running, but unfortunately, still the uptake remains low. The other reason that comes along that is LPO financing. Obviously, persons with disabilities have been down for so long. Indeed, most of us have been so long, down for so long, we don't know which way is up. As I said earlier, among the three groups, persons with disabilities are more disadvantaged. So, LPO financing, when you give me an LPO, again, unlike youth and women who enjoy youth and women enterprise funds and therefore get LPO financing easily and cheaply from the financing institutions, persons with disabilities lack the same. And our appeal is, if we are to go along, obviously we shall need a disability enterprise fund.
And welcome back to KTN Newsdesk. I'm Michael Karanja. Now, the 57 or so days of January are coming to an end, and perhaps that time has given us enough time just to look at what the investment climate in Kenya looks like, and to help us just get like a crystal ball of what to look forward to in the next 11 months. I'm now joined by Peter Ngeno, who's the GM for UAP Investments. Peter, it's a long year ahead. We've obviously had a more or less wonderful 2014. Yeah. Just looking at 2015 in terms of investment, what are some of the areas that you're most excited about?
Well, thank you, Michael, for having me. So when we start looking at investments, what you do is you first look at the economy and you see where the economy is going to be. And in 2015, we expect the GDP of Kenya to be in the range of 6 to 7%. I think the government came out and said they expect GDP growth to be at 6.9%. So in looking at that GDP, you're looking at the drivers of what's driving that GDP growth. So right now we're looking at, inflation is falling in Kenya. I think in December it was at 6.0, and the government's target is between 2.5 and 7.5. So with the falling inflation, we're also getting a decline in interest rates. And any decline in interest rates and inflation is good for the economy, because that means companies and consumers can borrow more cheaply from the bank, and those funds can be used to spur economic growth.
But just looking at that, because I saw some budget policy statement that came out last week, and the government was saying that they estimate that the economy grew by 5.3% in 2014. But just looking at that and where they expect the economy to be at 6.9, don't you think they are reaching too far, saying that since 2007 economic growth has been rather sluggish compared to the 5 years before 2007?
That's a good point, but the point, as I mentioned, when it comes to interest rates and inflation, those were the interest rate environment and the inflation environment in 2014 was not. It'll be much lower in 2015 than it was in 2014. So those two factors alone will increase economic activity.
Just looking at that, Monetary Policy Committee met like 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
Maintained the CBR at 8.5, decreased the KBRR to about 8.54%, 8.54%. Just looking at that, is it a case of now CBK trying to give more leeway to banks to actually get them to lower interest rates in the same way they envision where interest rate spreads should be?
That is one point. They're trying to encourage banks to lower their interest rates as well. In addition to that, in looking at the central bank moves when it comes to interest rates, we expected the interest rate environment to fall a bit further. However, we came in the other day that KRA missed its revenue target, so the government had to go into the market again to raise money. So that's keeping interest rates high. But once the 2015 comes around and past March, where we have a lot of maturities in government securities, we expect the interest rate to start falling down.
And in terms of sectors, we've already seen when the rebasing came, we saw that real estate and the construction sector was huge in terms of contribution to GDP. Just looking at that, and how the government envisions about 6.9%, what are the key drivers for this?
A lot of it has to do with the infrastructure spending that's going to take place on LAPSET and the standard gauge railway. Those are massive infrastructure projects. So when you have projects such as those, it involves a lot of segments of the economy. So for example, if you're building the railway, you'll need steel, you'll need cement and all those things. So that trickles down to all the industries. So it has an uplifting effect on all the industries. So a lot of it has to do with the infrastructure spend. A lot of it has to do with lower power, energy cost. 30% of our import bill is based on oil. And if oil prices are going down, that means our current account deficit is not going to be as bad. So all those things are spurring the economy.
Just looking at where you were saying KRA missed its targets, obviously putting a lot of pressure on where government is raising resources.
Yes.
How long do you see this playing out before it corrects itself?
Well, the government recently introduced the capital gains tax, so that'll go some way to plug the hole that KRA currently has. In addition, as I said, in March the government has quite a few maturities, so that's why they're also raising money to pay off those maturities.
Yeah.
After that, we expect to see a decline in government spend.
Yeah.
In fact, the government came out and said that they intend to borrow in 2015, I think it's 144 billion, which was down from the 190 billion that originally estimated to spend.
Just looking at that, it's interesting now you bring in capital gains tax, because there's been a lot of confusion right from the capital market, where there's been a lot of confusion as if brokers are going to be collecting this. There are obviously a number of people who are not too sure how to calculate it in terms of how to spread it. Do you think it's time for Kerry just to say, hold on, okay, let's suspend this for a while, let's see how best we can implement it, so that by the time they're saying yes, capital gains tax, because no one is opposed to it, it's just the mechanism of its implementation.
Exactly.
So do you think it should be suspended for a while, then as they look at certain sectors where perhaps its implementation has been more of a challenge than others?
And you're perfectly right. I mean, you know, I think they rushed this tax, and in rushing it, they didn't take a holistic view.
Yeah.
So, for example, like you said, there's differences. People are not exactly sure how to calculate it. Is it weighted average, or is it LIFO, which is last in, first out, or first in, first out?
Yeah.
So they need to provide clarity on a whole lot of issues. In my opinion, if I was sitting at the KRA offices, what I would have done was I would have basically said, okay, look, as of December 31st, this is the price of your stock, this is the price of your land. We'll use that as a base value, because now there's a lot of confusion, because if they, it's being done retroactively.
Yeah.
So sometimes maybe people have incomplete records. You've been buying and selling over a long period of time. How do you judge your cost? So there's a lot of things that need to be considered, and I think they should at least sit down with the major stakeholders and think, okay, how do we fix this so that we can implement it seamlessly.
Okay. And I'm just seeing a new report from Fortune's magazine saying that Kenya is ranked the 7th best investment destination in emerging markets. Just looking at that, and obviously looking at the World Bank Ease of Doing Business Index, where Kenya doesn't feature favorably, is there some contradiction in terms of how the government is trying to improve the investment climate in Kenya?
You see, when it comes to Kenya, there's the reason we have foreign participation, or why people, people from outside like Kenya, is because there are quite a few good companies in Kenya, well-run companies that have a huge presence and have a competitive advantage in the market, which is why people come here. So when they come here, they come and they buy the Safaricom's, the EABLs, and counters like that. So I understand why Kenya is an attractive investment environment, definitely for outsiders.
All right. And Crystal Ball, do you think the 6.9 is attainable?
I mean, it is if everything goes right, but how often does everything go right? For 6.9 to be attainable, we need to, the rains need to come on schedule. Food prices tea prices need to go up. The infrastructure spend needs to trickle down. So it's attainable, but there's a lot of moving parts to it. So all those moving parts have to move together for it to get to the 6.9.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah.
It has been Peter Nyano, the General Manager for UAP Investments, just trying to cast a crystal ball in terms of where they think the economy shall be in 2015. Najma Ismail, what's happening with donkeys on YouTube?
Thank you very much for watching KTN Newsdesk. My name is Najma Ismail. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.